Hello everyone. Well, finally we're getting back into a routine. This is the question and answer session, and normally it's done on a Saturday afternoon, but everything's been chaos in some ways. Timelines have been chaos over the last 5 days or so with all the activity on two fantastic arrivals here in Les Sables d'Olonne, and so there are some things that have gone a bit behind. I've finally finished answering about 167 emails from just 1 and a bit days, and they were the big days. So we didn't get back to them for about 4 days or something. We had masses when Jean Lucs arrived, and then more when Mark arrived, all literally saying, wow, fantastic. And honestly, that's our opinion too. The support and all the thanks is just great, so thanks for that. If I'm sounding a bit funny, it's because Jane in the chaos forgot to bring the microphone home, so we're working on the microphone on the phone at the moment, so I hope it sounds all right. Finally got to have a great night last night with Jean Lucs and his wife Adele and Yannick and Aida and Jane and I. It was a very relaxed occasion, and the six of us were involved for the last few years bringing the race to Les Sables d'Olonne, and it was quite amazing to look back on everything that's happened in the last the last couple of years. It's been quite something. So and it was good to catch up with Jean Lucs. He's been flat out with media. Same with Mark. I haven't really seen Mark yet since we finished the press conference. He's disappeared with family, and he's been doing lengthy interviews to all the media that he's got. He's a big star back home and all around the world. It was an incredible race, so that was kind of fun. And we'll get together this week. We have got Jean Lucs' rubbish off. He had 93 kilos of rubbish in 14 bags. Haven't got Mark's rubbish yet. I've gone through Jean Lucs' navigation log, his celestial sights. He had 73 pages or something like that of all his sight calculations, 3 each page, and went through his communications log, massive communications log. And he's still to sign a few declarations yet, but pretty much signed off, and I'll catch up with Mark on his bits probably Monday, Tuesday. Mark, I believe, is here until late this coming week, and then he'll head out, and unbelievably he's going to sail his boat back home. That's bold. I'd get someone else to sail it. We're slowly getting back into it. Right now, the three guys still sailing. Tapio's having some fun. He's going quite fast. He topped over 5 knots a few times. He's typical Southern Ocean weather. It's quite boisterous, big seas, not storms, just heavy northwesterlies at the moment. And he's probably about 4 days from Cape Horn, so we'll watch that. I was trying to do a tracker update this morning, but I did one yesterday, so hopefully you saw that. And everything's pretty much more of the same, so we'll get back into trackers tomorrow. Christophe will do a French tracker tomorrow, and then we'll keep running with written reports. We've been a bit slow on the written updates because we've been so busy, so there's a few holes on the website with the skipper updates. We usually try and keep them up every day or two. So, but I think everyone's pretty easy. They're understanding what's going on. István and Uku, they're in the trade winds, so it's all pretty consistent. Uku's moved into the doldrums, which is getting interesting. If you're following his track, 1 minute he's going this way, then he's going that way, then he's going that way, and all he wants to do is go north. But he's still very much stuck in the doldrums, and István is coming up from behind quite fast. So he's about 650 miles behind at the moment. It looks like Uku is going to move out of the doldrums in the next 24 hours. And in fact, the northeasterly trades are actually coming down to meet him. So he'll be happy. He'll be happy because once he gets there, he's on his way. The big issue is how much food has he got left, and we're all starting to think that he hasn't got much food. So in the next 2 weeks, I only break this in slowly for him. I've been asking him questions ever since Hobart and getting more and more of a picture. But I'll ask another question on his scheduled call this week, and then literally in the week after, I'll probably ask him, okay, how much food have you got left? We're really interested to know. We're all discussing it here. We know he left with not a lot by comparison to others. So that's kind of interesting. A couple of general ones, the information that many people have asked in the past that they're not on these list of questions today, but in discussions over dinner last night, Jean Lucs had 360 litres of fluid on board when he left, and if I remember rightly, it was about 260 litres of water. He had about 70 litres of wine, and he had about 50 litres, I think it was, of bottled bubbly water, not soft drink, but it's sort of sparkling water. So he left with quite a lot. So he wasn't worried about his water at all. What's another? So anyway, I've got questions there that we can answer in a minute on that. Some interesting stuff about his boat and his trip. And basically, there's going to be a lot of in-depth stuff. Jean Lucs still going to be busy, probably for another week. So don't expect to see us do the in-depth on him on the boat, talking about all the different things. But it will come. I'll get on the boat, and there'll be some big sessions. They'll be like features, and I'll be asking him all sorts of things. So you get a real insight into how he did it and what he did. The boat's for sale. If you're looking at doing the GGR, you'll need €120,000, walk on, walk off, and that includes everything to do the GGR. Basically, boat gets tidied up, and he's going to put a new mast in the boat, same mast, a short mast, and there's lots of discussions that he and I have had about that, and here's not the time to talk about it. The whole issue of running with a short mast versus a big mast. It's very interesting. He's got a lot of experience, and he's explained to me the whole process of how he did his analysis prior to the start of the GGR, what he was actually doing and the sailing that he was doing with computers and polars to work out performance and then do the whole picture. And I'm quite impressed. There's a lot of stuff that, I purposely didn't go through it with Jean Lucs in the beginning, and even though I knew he'd shortened his mast for some time, I was sworn to secrecy because he didn't want to let anyone else catch on to what was going on. And he's in the last 2 days, I've changed my views on a few interesting subjects thanks to Jean Lucs. It's quite fascinating. So that'll all come out as well. And then hopefully this week, while Mark is still here, we'll get together and grab him and do a full number on the boat. There's already some photos about his boat on Facebook you've probably seen, just to walk around the deck and stuff. And we'll do the same with Jean Lucs very shortly. So that's all pretty good. Don't forget the coins. They're going fast. These are the gold coins, right? We've gone through about a third of them in a bit over a day. They really are special. Now, we often get asked about the cost of delivery. The reality is that we don't make money on delivery. Even with t-shirts, with a few more people, we don't have a lot of stuff going out, and by the time we do everything, it costs a lot to get it organised, get it going, and we just figure we're not mucking around. We can't afford to give this stuff away. It's not a how do we say it? I won't call it's not a profit-making thing. It is, but the delivery, it's a pain in the butt for us, and in the future, and in 2022, we'll hope that the numbers get bigger, we get more organised, and we can have a proper distribution system and keep it simple, and it'll get back to a bit of reality. But right now, think of it as a custom delivery. Most of this stuff Jane does, and she can only do so many in a day, and it costs us time and money to make this happen. So it's not good for a lot of people. We wish we could do better. We can't. It's important for us. It doesn't cost us money to get things happening. So, but if you are after a coin, I've got to tell you, the plan was, we thought, okay, we'll let the diehards get them first, those that are real passionate about it. You can buy posters, t-shirts, get it together. One delivery charge of €35. And if there's any left by the time Uku gets here, we'll sell single coins and go from there. There won't be any left. I can tell you now, there's only 100 going out, and we've already gone through quite a few. So if you want the classic GGR gold coin, great memento, there's 100 going out, and don't miss out. All right, I think that's about all. So we've gone through Uku. Istvan seems to be doing fine. He's going in the trade, is still a bit soft. The good news for Istvan is that it looks very much like when he gets to the area where Uku is, he may sail straight through, no delays. So that means that he's picked up a day or so on Uku without doing anything. He'll just go through, and it could be as close as, say, when they both are in the northeasterly trades, Istvan could be 550 miles behind or something, maybe less, maybe even 500 miles, which would be amazing because they've still got to negotiate that Azores high when they come out of the trades. So, you never know what might happen. It's quite interesting. And we're obviously mindful also that Igor is still in the game, so we'll look forward to that. So, getting into some questions. Hugo Bochart was asking, Jean Lucs we explained yesterday about Jean Lucs and his impression that when he got pitch poled and rolled, he was actually not running dead downwind. He was still only one way to say it, he was still racing. He was sailing a performance course direct to Cape Horn, cutting across the waves slightly side on, not dead downwind, and he now says that he believes had he have been going dead downwind, he may not have got knocked down, roll over, or pitch poled. And so in relation to that, Hugo was saying, would it be possible and safer even to turn around and try and punch back to windward and go over the waves instead of the waves, overtaking you from behind? And the reality is, it's not really practical. Big wind, big waves and swells in the Southern Ocean. The last thing you want to do is turn around, because you're leaving yourself wide open for more damage to the boat, flying off the waves as you go down the back of the other side. You're still susceptible to knockdown, because you'll never go directly into the swell that's coming towards you. You're going to cut it at 45 degrees or something, so a breaking wave is still going to hit you, bang, and you go, and it could even be more violent because you've got your boat speed trying to go forward. Not to mention, it's hard to go to windward if it's blowing 60 knots, so it's not really practical in that sense, and all the things that we're talking about down there. Nia Turkora was asking, how do the guys sleep? We've had Jean Lucs and Mark come in. How do they sleep, after all that motion for 212 days, and they're really sailors at sea? They get on shore and they try to go to sleep. What happens? Well, I know in the case of Jean Lucs, it's very intermittent. The first night or two, he wasn't getting a lot of sleep at all. He'd just go down, he'd wake up an hour later or an hour and a half later, go back down again. It was back and forwards. But eventually you get back into a routine and he will get to sleep. It's still not really stable right now. He's been back about 5 days, so he still wakes up in the middle of the night. But then again, so do I. So it just takes time. In the case of Mark, I know he didn't sleep the first night. He got back in late. By the time we wrapped up, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and he just stayed up because the stage thing was at 11 o'clock, and he kept going through. And a lot of that's adrenaline as well. When you first get back, it's all so exciting. Family, friends, the next day's media. In the end, they get to a point where their eyes are hanging out, and they've got to rest. But it'll be very disrupted for the first few days, because first few nights, because when you're at sea, you're thinking about what course you're sailing, how's the wind vane going, how's the sails going. So you're always got one ear and your whole senses are attuned to the boat. You can be woken up as soon as the wave pattern changes, or some noises change. You just wake up. And when you get to then sleep in a normal bed, in a normal room, it's all dead quiet. You can't switch that mechanism off, and it can last days and days. So quite interesting. Okay, Terry Shenfishal was wondering about, is Tapio still taking water up into his crash bulkhead up forward? And yes, I believe he is. There's no, he could never find where it's coming from. It's a bit of a mystery, and he keeps checking it, but even to check is an effort, because he's got to move everything he's got stored up there and get all the way to the front, and then undo a few bits and let the water come through and get it out. So it's one of those regular tasks that he has to do probably every few days, and it is leaking. It'll get less as he gets further north once he turns the corner of Cape Horn, because the seas won't be so dramatic, but I think that'll be a nuisance factor for the entire voyage. Linus Wilson was asking, Mark was mentioning that the ships are not responding to him on VHF radio, possibly because it doesn't have the names of those ships or whatever, and other entrants. And so is that an issue? The GGR entrants have an AIS detector and a radar detector, so they get that. They know there's a ship out there, go out. They have, the majority of them had AIS transponders, and it's a one-way AIS. So that ship can see their boat coming, the entrance boat coming, and they would assume, therefore, that, like in the case of Mark, that he can see their ship as well and know who they are and what their name is. But he can't, because if they did that, Mark would be able to see the GPS. It's a one-way transmission. So it's not a real problem safety-wise. It just means they know the ship's there, but whether they can talk to them or not to get weather information or position, that's a bonus. And what Mark would do is he'd actually organise a collision course. If he really wanted it, he'd organise a collision course with the ship, then start talking to them, and of course they would answer, because they think, oh, either we move or he moves. So that's it. And the other question Linus asked, I had a bit of a laugh about this one. He said, a few entrants have complained about lack of charts for Port of Refuge. And because we ban electronic charts, don't you think that's an unnecessary risk? Well, you've got to get onto the program here. They can have as many paper charts as they want. It's got nothing to do with us. They could have charts for every port in the world if they want. So, we banned electronic charts. It's got nothing to do with risk at all. Even on my own personal boat, I never go anywhere without all the relevant paper charts. So it certainly does nothing for risk banning electronic charts. It's totally irrelevant. It's up to the entrant to have the charts they need. We don't specify what charts they should take. That's their choice, and that's it. Mark was able to draw a mud map chart of Hobart when he went in there because he couldn't find his chart. He either left it behind or it disappeared or something, and he coped with that quite well. So I think most of the entrants are, they certainly look after themselves in that regard. Madge Moden was asking, where's Jean Lucs' first BOC boat called Let's Go? So in 1986, Jean Luc did the BOC Challenge for the first time. That's when I met him. He had this beautiful 42-foot low sort of Swedish design centre cockpit boat, very fast, long and narrow. And I actually saw, I've got no idea, I didn't get to ask Jean Luc this, but I saw a post about it just recently somewhere, and I think it's over in Canada. I'm not sure. If you keep hunting around, we'll go then. If I remember, I'll ask Jean Luc when we do his live thing on on his boat when we're doing the big interviews. I'll ask him what's happened to some of his boats. It was a good one. Marion Shirley asked, Tapio is doing 5.1 knots. Does that mean all his barnacles have fallen off? No. It just means he's got a lot more wind behind and he's in more of a hurry. He's got a good weather window right now going to the Horn. There is a bit of a blow, which we're watching. I've been watching it for 36... Well, it's just started to form about 24 hours ago. On the forecast, which is 4 days ahead, it's a little bit too early. But there is a storm that's now forming up that possibly might be right at the tip of Cape Horn, just as Tapio's about to go round. We know he hasn't had a fix for some time. We're not sure of how accurate he is with his approach. We'll leave it for a while, but we're watching that whole thing, and I think tonight I will probably end up issuing a weather alert to Tapio about the possibility of this heavy weather that's going to form at Cape Horn just as he goes around. So, and I'm certain his barnacles are still there. Dem Madu asks, all the entrants have got engines, propellers. What do? Do they lock the prop or do they let it spin? And honestly, I don't know. I've never asked them. I think, if I remember rightly now, it's that long since I've thought about it. I've researched that question for my own benefit some time ago, and it's best to let it spinning. It creates less drag when the prop is spinning. You might need to Google this, but that's the way I remember it. And the thing is, the driving factor of that is what type of gearbox you have, because there's some gearboxes, if you leave the prop spinning in neutral, it can be very bad for the gearbox. You have to lock it up. But to the best of my knowledge, the only one that had a fixed prop was Kevin Fairbrother on my old boat that I sold him on the Tradewind 35. So most of them would have feathering props, because you don't want to let your prop drag. It's a huge amount of drag, absolutely huge amount. To sail around on a Tradewind 35 with a fixed 3-bay prop, I worked out at best it will cost you about nearly 3 weeks. At worst, it could cost you 5 weeks. Work that out. So you don't want to, you got to buy a folding propeller. Okay, so and he also asked about the anti-fouling. You might have seen it when I was talking with Robin yesterday. Robin Davey and I did a bit of a session on bits. Jean Luc has explained his entire anti-fouling system. It was all bought in the shop here in Les Sables d'Olonne. Okay, no top secret stuff. It's All Grip Shogun anti-fouling. They have different, and it's sold under C-Jet sometimes, but it's the parent company is All Grip Shogun. The system that he used, very good preparation. Then he put 3 layers of anti-fouling on the boat, which is what you call, it's not... First of all, with anti-fouling, you've got a hard racing anti-fouling. It's as hard as this paint here. You can polish it. So if you're around the boys racing, that's the sort of stuff you'd use. It's not that one. At the other end of the scale, you've got like a tropical cruising one, which is ablative. It's very soft. And by ablative, you put all the paint on, and as the boat's moving through the water, the paint is actually taking off any barnacles or any stuff that sticks to it. As you're moving, it comes away, and if you wipe the bottom, you can wipe it off really easy. So once you put that ablative paint on, you don't want to wipe it unless you absolutely have to. And in between those two, there's a medium one, so it's soft. It's not full ablative, but it's soft. And then in the mix, you've got different levels of biocide. And the biocide is the stuff which keeps the slime and the growth away, and it's the bad bits, that keep it clean. So you need to decide on what levels you're going to have. But the reason he put the 3 layers of the soft stuff on first, and then a final layer of the very soft ablative stuff, is that so as he's sailing down through the Atlantic, nothing will stick. The soft layer on the outside will have dissolved as just with water, taking away any barnacles. Then in the Southern Ocean, there's probably a little bit less barnacles because it's cold water and all that. I'm not an expert or a biologist, but a bit more, and then up through the Atlantic. And the bottom line is that with those 4 layers, his boat came back and it was just about as good as a baby's bum, nice and smooth, and there you go. No big deal about it, but he paid attention to it and did it the right way. So all grip Shogun, and it's sold in some parts of Europe under the brand Seajet, but that's the same parent company. Okay, Ray McBurney, what type of oh, this was funny, he's asked about 10 questions in one paragraph and I was trying to work out which ones I'd pick. So what type of Windvanes are all the entrants using? The entrant's still sailing. Jean Lucs has a Hydrovane, Mark has an Aries, and both of those two are the brands that I would only use. If I was doing the GGR, you need to seriously think about those two. The other one is Wind Pilot, and Windvanes has got a Wind Pilot, and also Tapio has got a Wind Pilot. And they're fine. They've got lots of adjustments, this, that, and the other. And it appears that they might be tricky to use in the beginning until you get used to it, and then they seem fine. And then others have had monitors have had real problems, and I'm quite prepared to say that because their problems are their brake coupling. The unit works, but their brake coupling is no good for these type of boats in the Southern Ocean. That's the easiest way to explain it, and we're looking at that, and we hope that they do something about fixing it because it affected a few of the sailors leading into storms. Others have used units which are now, they just didn't work, or they worked but they all broke, and there was direct cause of retirement for 3 boats. And what else is there? I think that was about all. But anyway, you can see it in the photos. Look at the photos at the start of the GGR. You'll see what's on the back of the boats, and you can see it. The next one was anti-fouling. I've just explained that. Some of them use really bad deal. Tapio got screwed because he ordered one type and they put on the wrong type. Igor was a nightmare. He put good paint on, but by the time they got here ready for the start, they thought they'd wash it, pull the boat out, wash it, and they washed off all that soft ablative paint, so there's basically nothing left, and we did the trip and completely covered with barnacles. The other interesting one, which I mentioned yesterday, you might have seen it, copper coat. I thought that might have been the answer. Mark Slats only used copper coat, and he dived regularly, kept it clean because it's hard. He'd get down there with sandpaper to clean it, but it basically was infested with barnacles as well. And Susie had copper coat with an anti-fouling on the top of it. I'm not being negative for copper coat. Copper coat, I believe, is quite good. I've seen very good results on that with other boats cruising the Pacific and so on. But it's a different principle, so do your own research on that. And there's a lot of other brand names are good too, because my opinion on the whole thing, All Grip is a really good paint. There's no question about that. Their anti-fouling is really good, no question about that. I could list you 3 or 4 other brands that are really good, like International Paints. They know what they're doing. They've got really good anti-fouling paints. It's important that when you're putting the paint on your boat, that you put it on the right way and read the instructions and all these sort of things. So, but obviously All Grip's pretty good. So, anyway, okay. The other one he asked about was food. They all use completely different types of foods, looked at it different ways. And there was another one here. I'm not sure what that was about. Anyway, that'll do. So, Good Fishers asked, why no mast steps? Why didn't any of the entrants use mast steps? I think Igor had some mast steps, and a few did, but generally they think the mast steps are heavier, so that adds to the, it makes the boat less stable. A bit of windage, all those sorts of things. So if you're a real racing boat, you wouldn't have steps. What would I do in the GGR for a Joshua boat? I think we're having steps. because they're really convenient. In the BOC, I used this, back in 1990, I used a similar climbing system to what most are using now. And there's a question here from someone, but I'll answer it now. Mast climber Christian Hayer was asking about what system, and it's basically like a rock climbing system or a mountain climbing system. You have a normal climbing harness, and it's suspended from here, and there you have a one-way jammer, and that could be like a Jumar, which is a climbing thing with a handle. You can open the handle, it'll slide up the rope. When you let the handle go, it jams. Okay, so it's a one-way jammer, and you have another one below that with 2 foot strops. So you pull it up, and you pull your knees up to your chest, lock it, and you stand up. And as you stand up, the other one that you've got that's connected to the chair, you just slide it up, and some of them, the top climber has that part at your chest here. So as you go up, it goes up automatically. And then when you go down, you have to walk it down the same way. So you're not actually climbing the mast. You're climbing a rope that's hanging from the top of the mast. And you strap that down, and then you can also take a harness with you and clip onto your cap shrouds or something as you go up. So they're basically stand up, sit down, all the way up and all the way down. So you're using your legs, to get up there. And there's various brands and everything on the market. So it's a pretty well-known system. But steps is convenient. But even then, when you go up the steps, the difference is that you can have a one-way jammer on, and you can still go up the steps and hang onto the mast at the same time. So it's not perfect. And in fact, in the BOC, the other thing I did, I had webbing loops, like big webbing loops, on the luff of the mainsail. And I could actually use those loops for 2 really interesting things. One is I could grab the loop and drag the sail down the track. So if you're reefing downwind and you've got to do something, you'd usually do it from the cockpit, but you could actually grab the sail. Instead of trying to grab sailcloth like that, it's a total nightmare. But with these webbing straps, you just grab it really easy and just haul it down. The other thing you use it for is steps. So if you're sailing and the boat's flopping around, if you've got your mainsail up, it keeps pressure on, the boat's heeling a bit, and you can do like buddy Alex Thompson, start climbing up the mast on an angle, but you've actually got these handles to hang on to all the way up, and you can actually climb the sail. It's actually quite cool. Not very good for windage, depends what your performance levels are, but a pretty cool way to do it. Margaret Keys was asking, was shortening Jean Lucs' mast contributing to the damage on the mast? No, it wasn't. We had an interesting discussion on this yesterday. We made some comments about the lower shrouds being 8mm instead of 6 and so on. So I'd suggest you get back to that live with Robin, have a look at that, and there's a lot of interesting answers there. But no, it wouldn't have, in its own way, caused that damage. There was a couple of ways to stop that damage, and we discussed it there. Simon Hawkins wondered, what responsibility does GGR have for weather alerts? What do we think? Because as you know, any wind over 35, 40 knots, we'll usually send a tweet to the entrance, let them know it's coming, and if it's extreme, we'll give them some advice and suggestions on how to get around it and where to go. There's absolutely no responsibility at all for GGR. This advice and opinions. If you download a copy of the Notice of Race from the website, you'll see we've got a page and a half of paragraphs here about responsibility, right, of the entrant. We basically tell them they'll probably die, okay? And they've got to sign that they agree with that. And it's up to them, Risk is a very interesting thing. And the GGR is not without risk. So everything that they do and everything associated with the GGR is entirely responsibility of themselves, and it's up to them when they want to enter, whether they want to start, whether they want to continue sailing after they've started, and anything we give them is advice. And we tell them specifically in that risk clause that they shouldn't accept our advice and that we're incompetent, we don't know what we're saying. It's all part of the legal process to make sure that we're telling them, don't listen to us, we're hopeless, we don't know what we're doing, your call. So all these people have been running around saying that, we're sending Mark into danger and into bloody all this stuff, and it's absolutely stupid. Well, there's very many issues associated with those statements, and the first one is that no entrant should listen to what we say. It's up to them. So that's the reality there. Jean Dennis wants to know, will Tapio have enough food? Tapio's got more than enough food. He's done an estimation on his arrival. He knows he's going to take a long time. and he got plenty of food. But Uku, that's another story. We really do believe that Uku might have some challenges in the end. We're not fearing for his safety. We're not worried that he's going to, starve to death. I mean, I did 48 days across the Pacific and only ate a couple of little biscuits every day when I was doing a bounty boat thing. You lose weight, and we know he's already losing weight, but we're not overly concerned at the moment. He knows what he's doing. If he's done the numbers and it's all wrong, he'll go into the Canaries or he'll stop in the Azores. You've got to have food. He's not going to be, reckless in that regard. So Jane Bromley wanted to know, interviewing Jean Lucs Vanity. Yeah, we're going to do it. We'll have great interviews, great wrap-ups, and there'll be a lot of material that'll come out about this entire adventure from all the entrants. There's some amazing things that have happened, and most of the entrants are still coming to terms with what happened, those that haven't finished and have retired from the event. I'm certain they'll come up with some great stuff in the future. Some are still coming to terms with the reality of it. It's quite shocking in some ways. It changed their world when they didn't make it, and watch this space. But certainly GGR will be developing a lot of material, and this Facebook page, the GGR website, keeps going on forever now. So it won't be as intense when the race is all over and all our sailors are home, but there'll be things happening all the time. So watch this space. Mike Phillips asks, given Istvan's having trouble with his steering pedestal, would I take a wheel or tiller? The answer is incredibly simple. I would never ever do the GGR with a wheel unless I was using a hydrovane. With a hydrovane, you lock your ship's wheel, and the hydrovane has an auxiliary rudder steering system with a flip-flop vane. So the ship's rudder is not moving, and the pedestal's not moving, and the wires are doing nothing. And it's a very good way to go if you decide you want a wheel, because you don't have to worry about wearing out the wheel. If I wasn't going to use a hydrovane, I would have a tiller, simple as that. You would get rid of the wheel, have a tiller, and then you can use either a hydrovane or you could use an Aries, which is a servo pendulum system which pulls the ropes, and it's very easy to lock them into the tiller and go from there. So yeah, if you want to use a servo pendulum Windvanes system like a wind pilot or something like that, don't have a steering wheel. Just go tiller. Simplicity is the key for everything. The less gear you have, the better. Get rid of the pedestal and all the bits that go with it. You save a lot of weight as well. So that's a simple one. Andy Taylor was, how long is the GGR open and what happened to the cut-off time? That's referring to, we'll be having the prize giving on April the 22nd this year, which is the 50th anniversary of Sir Robin completing his amazing journey around the world in the original Golden Globe. Tapio will still be out there, and Igor in Chichester class won't even restart it until the end of the year. There is no finishing time for the event. There are some completion dates for certain things. We say that if you're not there by the prize giving, you don't. There's some things you may not get, but the reality is, Jane and I, we get kicked out of France on the 3rd of May, I think it is. Our 12-month visa is up. We go out. We can't come back for at least 3 months. But the GGR will run from our computers wherever we are. We'll be in China and then Tonga. And Celine is still then running GGR here in Les Sables d'Olonne, and Les Sables d'Olonne City and the agglomeration are still supporting the race. So there'll be things happening all the way through. So for all intent and purposes, the website, Facebook still happens, and there'll be a bit of a hoo-ha when they turn up, I tell you, both for Tapio, no matter what time of the day or night or what month, what year, and the same for Igor. It'll be great to see Igor take off, and we hope he's well. We wish him all the best with his health, and we'll see him soon in Les Sables d'Olonne. Okay, I've lost track of my question spots here. Okay, so John Klutz was asking, what's the consideration when we choose a logistics port like Les Sables d'Olonne in terms of the geographic safety of getting them safely away at the start and back in at the finish? And how do I think about Les Sables d'Olonne? Sables d'Olonne is perfect for starting and finishing any yacht race. They have a huge yacht racing program here out of Les Sables d'Olonne, not just the Vendée Globe or the Golden Globe. They have a lot of other series out of here, and some of the major coastal events that go all around the coast of France. It's a major port. There's big ships coming here. It's got all the navigational aids. It's got a fantastic, very impressive SNSM like the Coast Guard or rescue services. This is it's a really busy fishing port, so there's boats going out of here and all sorts of weather at all sorts of times, so it's a very safe port. On the very rare occasion, the only experience of this with the Vendée Globe, someone was telling me the other day that on one occasion, one of the skippers was asked to stand off. Okay, there was a big storm coming through, the port was more or less closed, very rare occurrence, it can happen, and he was asked to stand off until it died down, and then it got through. So it's not a problem. There's all sorts of decisions used to choose the port, and the Sable d'Olonne is absolutely excellent, and besides that, it's got a very good group of locals who love this sort of thing. And so we're very happy to be here, and we're looking forward to being here again in 2022. And those that missed it, we are currently now in talks with the Sable d'Olonne about a possible partnership again to have the 2022 GGR coming from the Sable d'Olonne, and we're excited about that, so watch this space. Malcolm Collins was asking, would we ever have a Tetley class in the GGR? A Tetley class is a multi-hull class. No, there won't be a multi-hull class. You'd never get the multi-hulls going slow enough to keep down to the speed of the monohull. So we're not interested. It's not meant to be an exact copy of 1968. This is an event in the spirit of the original. And as you all know, this one was celebrating the winner, Sir Robert Knox-Johnson. The next one, 2022, will celebrate the achievements of Bernard Matessier, as well as Robert Knox-Johnson and the whole event. And then after that, after we've done Suhaili for the first, Matessier for the second, each further event after that in 2026 and so on, yes, it's going to go on forever, will be just the GGR. So, but no multi-hulls, it's not the right mix. It's like trying to mix motorcycles with motorcars. Michael Michael Simpson. Can the entrants get sport on radios and stuff? Yes, they can. They've all got receivers as part of the requirement to get weather reports and time signals for their navigation. So they can listen into all the shortwave radio stations, BBC, Radio America, Radio Russia, all that stuff. And it's amazing. They do have a lot of sport and things like that. When they're close to the coast, they can get domestic radios as well. And at night time, some of those stations travel a long way. Might travel 1,000 miles or more with the night skip. Last question from Sasha Ebert. Which weather maps are more accurate? Which ones do we find? There's a couple of different models, and you've probably seen we've discussed this before. Windy TY on our tracker has one particular model. That's the model that's putting all the computer inputs to give you the visual impression of what's happening with the weather, with wind direction and all those other elements, wave heights and so on. And there is another one called ECMWF, and that one is same process but it's slightly different inputs, and both of those models are used for all weather forecasting all around the world. Okay, and some people believe one is better than the other. Normally, I've got to say, most meteorologists will say that the other one, the ECMWF, is slightly more accurate because it has a little bit more better data input and more regular. But interestingly, and we look at both, when there's a really tricky situation, I've got a couple of friends that are specialists in this, and they get on and we talk together and they give us their opinion on what's going on. So when it's important, we'll look at both. But my opinion, after going through all this time on Windy TY, is that at the end of the day, I've always been preferring to use the standard Windy TY computer input on the GGR tracker. It's at the end of the day, it's worked out right virtually every time. Now, I'll give you another case on this. The big issue with Mark and the big storm and all that sort of stuff. Based on the information, the standard Windy TY that we were looking at on the tracker, our impression was that there's no reason to send Mark anywhere else, but just keep going straight. He would have stayed ahead of it. We never slowed him down. There was a separate storm in front of him, and when that moved through, we said, no need to slow down, Mark, just keep going. You got a big one behind you, keep going, and you'll get in. You should get in before it happens, because it could have gone three ways. It was unstable, it was a long way ahead, and once again, what happened? It proved correct. So whatever other people were going with, that's fine. But at the end of the day, on nearly every occasion, I've found that our interpretation from the standard model on Windy TY has been right. So anyway, that's about it. So I think that's all part of the fun. We'll don't forget the coins. If you want one, don't dilly-dally. These are really cool. That's just the packing case that it comes in. So really cool little image, and I just want to make sure that those that are real passionate family members get them, because there's only 100, and about a third of them, over a third are gone already. So, okay, thanks a lot. See you soon.